Thank you for joining the Optoma Interactive Flat Panel webinar today. My name is Bob Gettner, sales engineer with Optoma, and joining me today is Roland Hamilton, also a sales engineer with Optoma. Hey,
everybody.
Roland.
Hey there.
I just wanted to introduce the webinar today. We're going to talk about our Creative Touch interactive flat panels. We're going to mainly do a demonstration of the technology today and how this technology can be used in the classroom and some of the added features that we have added to these panels in the last couple of years that addresses many of the educator needs that are out there today. We'll talk about some of the educator support that we offer. And then at the end of the webinar, we will have a opportunity for you to win a $100 gift card. We're going to do a couple practice questions so that you can get used to the way to respond. And that is by going to the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, opening that up. During the webinar, feel free to send any questions that you have. And also, when we ask the questions at the end for the quiz, type in your answer there. The first person to respond will win a $100 gift card. All right, from there, we'll also take questions during the webinar. So if you have questions, feel free to type in those questions. And now we're going to move into a demo of the interactive flat panel.
Perfect. Thanks, Bob. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate you taking the time. Just bear with me a moment while I stop the screen share. Perfect. So we're here to talk about the Creative Touch interactive boards from Optoma. Because we only have a limited amount of time today, I could take 2 hours in showing all the features, all the bells and whistles, all the little widgets, the collaborative tools. There's just too much on these boards to try to show you everything in a brief demo. Instead, what I'd really like to focus on are the high points, right? Some of the key features, the stuff we think you'll really find interesting, and features and benefits that you are not going to find from other solution providers in this space, right? We're going to go over first briefly just a little bit about the boards, what they are, what they can do, the main modes of use, that sort of thing, and then move into some more of those more specific high points, right? So just to give you a little background, the Creative Touch interactive panels are available in 3 sizes: 65, 75, and 86-inch diagonal sizes. All 3 of those sizes are 4K UHD resolution. So 2160p or 3840 by 2160 resolution. If you put these boards in front of folks who are doing photo editing or video editing, the picture is fantastic. They're fantastic monitors, right? And needless to say, there's a touch overlay. These are 40-point touch screens. But they're fantastic displays just in and of themselves. And they're very bright because they're commercial panels. They offer 400 nits of brightness and 420 nits on the 86-inch. If you're a tech person and you're into those specs. But in basic terms, they can withstand or overcome the light of pretty much any environment other than outdoor, right? They're not designed for outdoor use, but in terms of, if you have a classroom that's south-facing and there's a lot of windows, the panels they're commercial displays, so they're more than bright enough to overcome all your normal indoor lighting challenges, shall we say. And I should also point out, because they're commercial displays, they're also very bright, or they're very durable, is what I meant to say. The case is all metal. The only plastic on the outside of these boards is really the power button and the Wi-Fi module. The rest of the case is all metal. The glass is 7H hardness rated anti-glare, anti-fingerprint tempered glass, which I'll give you a brief demo on how durable the glass is. Let me just launch my screen markup, get some markup on screen. Want to just point out quickly, I can take my regular door key, right? Here's just my regular keys and my door key, and I'm not afraid of scratching the glass. They're extremely and let me do it down here where you can kind of see that I'm marking. 7H scratch resistance or 7H hardness rating is effectively the scratch resistance of quartz crystal. And let me go ahead and demo the palm erase feature. Anytime you have markup on screen, you can just put a palm flat on screen to erase what you've marked up, right? So what can you do? Oh, and I should also mention that the boards feature 20-watt stereo speakers. So more than enough sound output for your typical classroom, conference room, classroom, training room size space, right? If you get into a larger space or you want to use one of these boards in a cafetorium or auditorium, they do feature both analog and digital audio outputs. You can feed the audio into your PA system or DSP, whatever you've got going on in that regard. So we do accommodate if you've got an alternate setup. I'll mention quickly, there is also an HDMI output, which mirrors whatever's on screen all the time. So if you're doing hybrid learning or high flex learning, recording, webcasting, things of that nature, it can be very handy to utilize that HDMI output, which is always live, or for more traditional uses, like you want to have in a college lecture hall, the professor can present on a 65-inch board. This is a 65-inch board that I'm working with today. Professor could present on their board, but the output could be blown up onto a larger screen, like a projector screen behind them, something of that nature. So what can you do with these boards? There are three main modes of use. There's a built-in Android system. So out of the box, just give the boards power and internet, and there's quite a lot you can accomplish with just the board in and of itself. And we're also plug and play compatible with Windows, Mac OS, Chrome OS, as well as Linux. So if you want to connect a laptop, a MacBook, a desktop, a Nook computer installed behind the unit, you can accomplish all of those. There are 3 HDMI out or inputs on the board, 3 HDMI inputs. There's also a legacy VGA input if you have some older computers that you want to incorporate. There is also a USB-C connector. That USB-C connector supports audio, video, touch feedback back to your source computer, as well as 65-watt charging. So if all your teachers have MacBooks or laptops, Windows laptops that is, they can just take that single cable, plug it in, and it charges their laptop and also brings up the computer screen on the board and allows for touch feedback. So having that USB-C connector is really handy. The third mode of use, we also sell 2 different slot-in computer versions, or OPS computers. They physically install in the side of the board, and at that point, it turns the board into a giant Windows 10 or Windows 11 all-in-one. They do support the TPM hardware security architecture so that you can properly install Windows 11. They're a fantastic option, for the right application where you want a permanently installed computer. So the 3 main modes of use are the built-in Android system. You can connect your external laptops or computers, and we also sell the i5 and i7 slot-in computer options. In addition to those, call them the standard modes of use, right? And I should also mention that you can jump back and forth real time. You're not locked into just using the board as an Android system or a connected computer. You can on the fly just launch into the input menu and jump back and forth between whichever source it is you want to access. In addition to those main modes of use, we also offer a whole host of wireless sharing options. You can cast to the boards from all your major device types. I'm just going to open up my iPhone for a brief demo and start casting to the board. Here's my phone on screen. I'll flip it into landscape mode so you can see a little bit. And let me zoom in on the battleship North Carolina. That's a few miles from home. So the casting options, so you can cast from all the major device types, iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, as well as Chrome. We offer the ability, you can share via a four-way split screen mode. So in a classroom, the students can all join, and the teacher, using an admin console, basically from a teacher laptop, they can control who is sharing and when, and the board can split into 4, like a 2x2 quadrant or array of student shares, or it can, be side by side if there's just 2 computers sharing. So back quickly to the built-in Android system, I want to point out that one thing that's rather unique about Optoma is that we do offer our own app store. Most manufacturers just preload all the apps they have, and that's what you get, no more, no less. We preload our core applications, so the web browser, media player, document viewer, the basics, the things that everybody's going to need, And then through our own app store, the Optoma app marketplace, we make a further selection of apps available. I'll point out that we make available all the major video teleconference apps. So Zoom, Skype, Teams, Cisco WebEx, and GoToMeeting are all available. Then we also make available a selection of apps that are appropriate for both corporate and education. So a lot of news apps, BBC News, Wall Street Journal. We offer things like Prime Video, Spotify, Google Earth, kind of crossover apps, call them, right? Because they're appropriate for both corporate or education. And then in the K-12 space, we offer a whole host of K-12 specific applications. Some of the most popular ones are Kahoot, Class Dojo, Quizzes, Duolingo, Socrative. There are others. Those are the ones I get asked about most often. Going back to the home screen of the board is customizable, right? So I can go in and we preload a few different wallpapers, but I can change the wallpaper to whatever I want. You can load your own images, right? And the home screen apps are customizable. So here where I have Class Dojo, if I don't want this to be Class Dojo and instead I want it to be the Zoom app, I can just change what those home screen icons refer to. I want to draw your attention up to the top of the screen. And the first really powerful feature I want to point out is the single sign-on for Google. So at the top, I've got a sign-on option. A little tab floats there most of the time. And when I drop it down, it gives me a sign-on option. So I can sign on from here utilizing my credentials, right? I can enter my username and password on screen for either Google or Microsoft, my Microsoft account. We also offer the ability to load your Dropbox account onto the board. It's just not embedded in this quick access menu. But by far the easiest and most secure and fastest way to log onto your Google account is to utilize the QR code. So I'm going to open up the camera on my phone, scan that QR code, and it lets me log in via my phone instead of having to enter my credential on screen. And in fact, because my phone stores my Google credential, I don't even need to enter my password. I basically just confirm the account that I want to sign in, and immediately I'm signed into the board, essentially just by scanning the QR code. Being logged into my account loads all my Google content. All my Google Drive is now essentially loaded, embedded in the file system. But what I really want to highlight today is Creative Board. Of all the applications that are available, whether they're preloaded apps or apps that we make available from our App Store, Creative Board is probably the core application. It's our digital whiteboard platform. Now, before I dive into a file and show you what the whiteboard can do, I want to point out that because I signed in using my Google credential via the QR code on the home screen, it loaded all my files. So all my previous work is instantly available from the main menu of the whiteboard software. So if a teacher comes into the room, scans the QR code, logs into Google, all their files become available. And all you have to do to log out is just press the power button before you walk away and you're logged out. It does also time out, or you can manually log out. But really the essential function is that just by logging in with your Google account, all your files and all your content populates. So I'm going to open up a file here. This is something I was already working on. And here we are in the whiteboard space. The first thing I'm going to demo is the floating toolbar, right? It's called the floating toolbar because you can drag it around the screen and drop it wherever you want. One handy feature is also you can press to hold to recall the toolbar. So if I'm over here on this side of the board and I don't want to walk over, I can just press and hold and the toolbar snaps to where I want it. So I can either drag it around or just press and hold and the toolbar snaps to where I want it. The floating toolbar works in conjunction with the dual tip pens. So I've got a whole host of tools in here. I kind of like this one, this navy blue marker color, but the pens are dual tips. So there's a fine point to the pens and a broad point to the pens. You don't have to use the pens. I've been manipulating the board up to this point using just my fingers. But if you use the pens, particularly in the whiteboard, you get additional functionality. I should also point out that when you connect to a Windows machine, Windows Ink, the drivers that are embedded in the board are recognized by Windows, and the dual tip pen also functions in Windows. So for example, if you have a Word document up, you can scroll through the document with one side of the pen and redline the document with the other side of the pen. So Windows also recognizes the functionality. But here in the whiteboard, what I can do is choose a different color on the opposite side of my pen. And now I have two different options available to me just on opposite sides of the pen. So I can write with one side of my pen and have a highlighter or a different color marker with the other side. Now I wrote this pretty loosely. That hello is not the best hello I've ever written, but I'm going to select it and I'm going to see if my board will recognize it. Yep. So I just wanted to briefly demo the handwriting recognition feature. So the Creative Touch interactive whiteboard or digital whiteboard recognizes handwriting and can automatically convert it into text for you. We have also recently just added the ability to recognize mathematical expressions. So if you write a function, you know, y equals 2x plus 1, you can also convert mathematical expressions into text, you know, from handwritten. In the near future, we are planning to release the ability to then translate. Once the board has converted your handwriting into text, there'll be another drop-down button where you can then convert that into, you know, a number of different languages that you'll have the option to load, basically. So moving on to another page of the board. Here, I just wanted to demonstrate, these are some shapes that I've preloaded. So we offer 2D and 3D shape tools in the floating toolbar. You know, if I want to add another shape here, I can just go into this menu and what's one I haven't got? A cylinder. Let me add a cylinder here, which I can then drag and drop around. I can copy and paste this to other pages. There's also a ruler and protractor functions, which are really handy. Let me go back a page, and there's one other thing I want to point out here. And let me clear this page before I dive into it. You can change these backgrounds, right? The backgrounds are customizable, whether it's different colors, right? If you want something fun or that chalkboard look. I kind of like the gray tones just because they're high contrast and easy on the eyes. But if you want a fun color background, you can certainly have color backgrounds. But in addition to the color backgrounds, we have built in more than 100 pre-made background templates for you. And let me see if I can zoom my camera in a little bit so you can see a little better. We have provided pre-made templates in all the main K-12 subjects. So reading, writing, math, science, geography, geology, as well as a bunch of other general kind of backgrounds like flow charts, process charts, Gantt charts, things of that nature. But here we see some of the math backgrounds. We have XY axis with grids. If we go into the sciences, there's some really interesting ones. You know, here's a periodic table of elements background, and I can just apply that background to the board and then mark it up however I want, right? And you're not limited to the backgrounds that are preloaded because the preloaded backgrounds are essentially 16:9 images. So if you have existing content that you want to add, or you want to be able to make backgrounds using PowerPoint, it's very easy to create a background in PowerPoint, save it as an image file. You just put it into an appropriate folder and it becomes available as a background. So you're not limited by our selection, right? Let me go on to a fresh page, and I want to show you some really interesting features. So one of them, the next thing I want to highlight, let me zoom back out a little bit. Up at the top, we have a couple embedded buttons. And one of them is my Google Classroom menu. This is huge. We have embedded a Google Classroom menu into our whiteboard system. So I have a dummy class. I'm not a teacher, right? But I've created a course called Pre-Algebra, and I can load my materials. So here's an example of a quiz. This happens to be a quiz on linear functions, and I can move this window around. I can make it, you know, resize it, make it smaller, bigger, full screen. And not only can I access the information, I can actually work with this and fill the form as we, you know, work through the quiz, and then we can go on the side and, you know, whiteboard through the problems, whatever we need to do. And again, that's an embedded Google Classroom menu right in the whiteboard. The other function that we've added that's really unique, something you're not going to find from other manufacturers, we have embedded other solution providers. We have embedded a web browser within the whiteboard. So I can use this web browser to look up information like you would expect, but I can also use it to find images and content that I want to drag and drop in here. So I've searched for Lincoln, and if I want an image of Abraham Lincoln, here I found some images in the browser. If I want this picture, I can simply press and hold here, and the image becomes available to drag and drop onto the screen. I can then resize it and do markup right on top of it. I can then move the browser window out of the way and kind of just float it to the edge. And we've made it very easy to bring in engaging content, at the touch of a button or with as few steps as possible. So other solution providers give you some of these functions, right? You can essentially accomplish the same thing with the solutions from other manufacturers, but we have really reduced the steps by embedding these key functions directly within the menu system, like within the menu of the whiteboard, that is. So instead of having to leave the whiteboard, go to the browser, find your content, copy and paste it, come back into the whiteboard and paste it, you can literally open up the web browser, search for what you want, and drag and drop it into the space. We have also recently added an even easier step. If what you want is image content, we have a direct video and image search bar. So if I want an image of Pythagoras, I can just search for Pythagoras. It brings up only images so that I don't have to worry about other cluttery web content coming up. I can just get an image of Pythagoras really easy, right? And again, you can mark up right on top of this. So in addition to the Google Classroom embedded menu, the embedded whiteboard, the embedded image search function, let me just clear this. I want to also point out that the same way the windows open up for the web browser, you can also open up a camera window, which is really very handy. If you have a connected document camera or a connected USB microscope, you can bring up that content in its own dedicated window that you can do markup on top of. But what I wanted to show you next was the import feature. So I've paired my Google Drive. I can go into my Google Drive and bring in all sorts of content. The first thing I'll bring in an example of is a PDF. Let me load this PDF from my Google Drive. And here's my PDF loaded, right? And not only can I resize this and move it around, I can actually work in the PDF here, right? I'm actually scrolling through the document while I have the ability to whiteboard and redline and do whatever it is I need to do, right? In addition, let me clear this again. In addition to being able to bring in content, we have added the ability to load Google Slides as backgrounds in the whiteboard. And this is huge because so many teachers have an existing treasure trove of Google Slides content available, right? And just like I imported the PDF, I can point to my cloud, go into Google Drive. Where did I put my file? Here we go. Here is a Google Slides file on the Pythagorean theorem. And when I choose the file, the board gives me the option of picking which slides I want to import, right? So I'm not forced to bring in the entire presentation. If I'm just working on a few pieces of this, or I'm splitting this lesson into 2 class sessions, I can just bring in the slides that I want, hit import, and now this has actually become a background in here. So I can highlight this, I can mark it up, and I can just move from slide to slide. We've essentially made this content, this Google Slides content, via the super easy to access import function. The file system is tied to my Google Drive. I can bring in my existing content as backgrounds on the whiteboard. The other piece that's harder for me to demo, but we encourage you to go and play with it, essentially, for lack of a better word. We have recently launched a web interface to our whiteboard platform. You can access it through a web browser at creativeboard.optoma.com. Just go to creativeboard.optoma.com. You can create an Optoma account, or you can sign in with your Google credentials there. This provides a couple different pieces of functionality. There's two or three really key takeaways from it, or let's talk about the use cases, and I think you'll see how powerful it is. from the teacher perspective, the teacher can go to the website, log in with their Google credential, and access the whiteboard space without being in front of the whiteboard. So in teacher office time, they can, from their computer, laptop, what have you, log onto the website and set up their files. They can set up their pages, set up their backgrounds, bring in the image content, lay out the lesson, and then when they get in front of the board, log in, choose the appropriate file, and the file is exactly the way they left it, right? From a student perspective, the student can be granted access. So the teacher can add in a single click an entire Google class of students to have viewer access to a whiteboard or editor access if the teacher so chooses, right? So the students, we're working on this today in class. The students can go home and review. They can log on to the website and see the exact notes and exactly how we mark this up through the web browser by logging in using their Google credential, right? They can go to the website and see exactly what was done in class. And that's really powerful because there are numerous studies have shown that the retention of the information and that true deep learning, right, that doesn't get forgotten easily, occurs much more readily when a student can go home and review the exact material as it was presented in class, right? So they're not going home and reviewing a textbook or something completely different. They can go home and on their Chromebook, on their computer, on their iPad, right? It's through a browser. So really any device type, they can go home and see exactly how they can see the content exactly how it was presented to them in class. And that really engages that deep learning that we're looking for, needless to say, right? The other thing I want to show you, so hopefully that's given you some good ideas. Oh, the other thing I should say about the creative board, again, I'll give you the URL, creativeboard.optoma.com. Just spell Optoma right, O-P-T-O-M-A, creativeboard.optoma.com. You can go and play with it for yourself. It'll launch into, you can create a whiteboard file, you can apply the backgrounds, you can see what the pen and shape tools do, you can import documents into the space, images into the space. It's really almost identical to the experience you get when you're in front of the board, right? The other thing I want to mention about the whole web interface to the whiteboard is that the files live in perpetuity on the cloud. So once we do something in class or in the office, whatever the case is, once you start a file, you can log onto it later and it's exactly the way you left it. So if you want to start a file at home or start a file in the classroom, add to it during office time, come back to it again, the files live perpetually on the cloud. So it's always there to access, and it eliminates the need for converting things into PDFs or kind of shareable document formats, because all you have to do is provide access, basically share with a particular email, and anyone at that email can log on and access the content at any time. The other thing I should mention is that users can log on real time, right? You're not limited to just an asynchronous, this works really well in a hybrid, high flex environment, right? But you can also utilize it real time. Either a teacher can either add via Google Classroom, they can add a whole class of students, or they can add just single email addresses at a time. And then those kids can be in the back of the room, essentially on their Chromebook or in the classroom, right? And they, on their Chromebooks, can be adding to the whiteboard if the teacher gives them that permission. So the other thing I want, let me start my screen share. Let me minimize this. Forgive me, I've got a whole host of things going on here. I want to get back to the browser. So Optoma Management Suite, we have launched a web-based command, control, and management system for not just our interactive displays, not just the creative touch line, but also our video projectors as well. Just bear with me while I get my Zoom controls up. I'm going to go to I'm going to share the web page with you. I'm going to share screen one. And I'm going to log into the system. So here, you should be seeing my screen here. Let me just move this around. I need to move the Zoom toolbar. So so basically the way the system works, the system administrators, whether it's the district superintendent or just admin folks at the school, whoever's in charge of the technology, they own the account, right? And you can have multiple users with different permission levels, all that functionality is there. But basically, whoever's in charge logs into the system, the displays are paired to their account, so they show up on the system. So my system is very simple. I have one device, my board. It's online right now. I can go into my device list and see the status of that device. Here's the interactive panel in Roland's office. The device, there's no trouble. It's showing green. It shows its local IP address. It's connected via Wi-Fi. Here's the firmware version I'm running. Here's the total time I've ever, that's the amount of hours that this board has been run or used total. It shows the current status. Right now it's in the Android system. And I can do some, I have some quick functions. I can turn devices on, off, mute very quickly. So from here, you've got the ability to control all your devices, right? And everything can be scheduled. So power on, power off, input changes, volume. The most straightforward applications are every day at 5:30 p.m. you want everything in the district to turn off, right? School's closed, everyone's gone home, the buildings should be locked at that point. You can have everything turn off at night, power on automatically in the morning. But there are a couple of functions I want to show you specifically. So let me go into this device, and I want to show you how you can broadcast to these displays. We can take over the screen either with text or a multimedia message. I'm going to send a multimedia message. It's going to be an image. Let me choose an appropriate file. So this is actually a file that one of our customers, I believe it's a community college in Southern California. They have these boards set up in some lab spaces, and they've programmed automatically. You can schedule these events. This can be scheduled to broadcast certain days of the week at certain times. And I'm going to just demo how. Let's demo for. I just want this image to display on 18 seconds. That's a reasonable amount of time. Let me hit send, and you will see that in any second, my board is taken over with that message on screen. And this just happens to be a message about lab safety. Make sure you wear your safety goggles, no food or drink, and dispose of chemical waste properly. So you can essentially use Optoma Management Suite as a simple digital signage system. The other big piece of Optoma Management Suite is trouble alerts. So the tech folks can get email alerts when anything goes wrong with one of the devices in the system. So if my board drops off the internet, if something overheats, that's very unlikely. But whenever any one of a list of problems that you can choose, when this problem happens, these particular people get an email saying, hey, room 105 dropped off the internet. And the tech folks can go and investigate, why did room 105 drop off the internet? And they can fix it before a teacher ever has to say to anybody, hey, room 105 stopped working. It lets people proactively respond to trouble situations. So let me get back into sharing the PowerPoint here.
That's great. And also, Roland, as mentioned before, this is a pretty full demonstration today, but we can also, if there's additional information that you need, or if you want to see some tips on how to use different features of the interactive flat panels, we're available to help out with those questions anytime. Just get in touch with us, and we will be sending out an email after the webinar with contact information.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Bob, for reminding me. If your school, whether you're an Optoma dealer or an organization that's interested in this solution, get in touch with us and we'll be happy to provide you with a personalized demo kind of geared to exactly how you might be wanting to deploy an interactive solution. So want to just cover really quickly some of the available accessories. We have a wall mount available, right? We kind of automatically include it with most purchase orders, but it is technically an accessory. These are standard VESA patterns, the bolt pattern on the back of these units. So if you have existing mounts, they're more than likely compatible. We do sell our own mount. We have a couple different carts you can put these on. If you're not wall mounting the units, we sell the more simple version is just a rolling cart on casters. It's fixed in the sense that once you install the board, it's not height adjustable, but you do have some flexibility at the time of install how high you want the board relative to the ground. You can position it higher or lower depending on who's going to be using it and under what circumstances. But it is a very solid piece. There's also the EST09, which is our motorized cart. Motorized in the sense that it raises and lowers via connected remote control. There are safety features built in so that it can't hurt anybody in its travel. But if you want to be able to have a board one day being utilized by adults and high school students, and the next day have it in a kindergarten or first, second, third grade classroom, it can be raised and lowered, right? So very flexible. Again, want to just remind you that we do sell i5 and i7 card slot computers that physically install in the side of these boards. The Wi-Fi module is pretty much included with every board we ship, so no need to really talk about that. But the BM21 wireless speakerphone, kind of hard for you to see on camera, but there's the size and shape of this device. It's a Bluetooth, or it functions via one of those little wireless dongles, like your wireless mouse. Excellent wireless speakerphone if you want to put these into a collaboration room type of use case. And we also sell our own 4K web camera. You can be set up just like your typical monitor top webcam. It is 4K. It features auto framing. It works really, really well. I use my